Hello everyone, and welcome back to Fleet's Random Ramblings, on a Saturday again. Yeah, so, work's tiring. Who would have guessed? We really are throwing the work out the door recently, so, actually, I wanted to give slightly more of a steer to this one, but, this isn't a dedicated alt history ramblings. It's more of a ramblings with a theme, if you will. It's more so people can, if they wish, ask questions about the various alt history timelines that I've created, but it's not dedicated to that purpose. You can ask normal questions if you want. We'll be running through till about 9 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock, and then we'll be wrapping up as I get ready for my usual events after on a Saturday. So without further ado, let's get into it. Team Locker asks, right, I'm finished, so I have to ask, what do folks with various backgrounds honestly think of finished sauna culture? When we're still sitting at 90 degrees, completely naked, is it life-changing and brilliant, or do we have someone convince the world that it's rude to point out how absolutely mad it sounds? Simply put, it's culture. Culture is what culture is. It's not... You can't really apply infectives to it. It just is what it is, and that's about the long and the short of it. People can think of it whatever they like, but at the end of the day, push comes to shove, culture is culture. It is neither good or bad. Right. So, I don't know if we have any questions at all. What the hell is going on here? I don't understand what the hell's going on. There we go. There we go. Anyone else got any questions at all? Come on, don't be shy. Oh, of course. Of course, I always do forget about that occasionally. I don't know if it'll work. It usually has to be started before the stream for it to work properly. But we'll see. We shall see. You must forgive me for a second. While I just try and get... I'm just trying to fiddle with the bot to get it working. Just give me a minute. Hang on. Gosh. There we go. No one's sending me anything important, anything worth a damn.
I'm proud tables where I could give my life for Pakistan.
No. No. No.
Yeah.
Right, right, okay. Knight6831 asks, how stupid is Ace Combat Joint Assault's Golden Axe plan? Well, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna have a look. And we're gonna see what the plan is. Let's have a look. Meow. Okay. Right. Oh, it's these fuckos.
Oh?
Right. Basically, they were a private military group who was funded by a guy who wanted to cause disruption to own all of the world's stock. Not some. All of the world's stock. Even though he had almost all the money in the world, which, you know, you know, you don't build a fucking aerial fortress with no money. That's not, you don't. And it's I just it's dumb. It's very dumb. It shows a complete lack of understanding about how the stonks work. Stonks don't work like that. Stonks do not work like that. You can't just cause an attack to make insurance prices rise, to use your shares in insurance to thereby buy insurance, to control insurance, to sell more insurance. Also, that makes it really fucking obvious what you're doing. This guy bought a lot of shares prior to the insurance thing. He swallowed up the market of insurance companies whose buildings would just so happen to be destroyed by the giant flying aircraft with the laser. Oh, he did it again. In the country that was going to be attacked before it was announced it was going to be attacked. The plan doesn't even make it out the gate. Like, FBI just rocks up at his house and goes, usually with a pair of handcuffs, and goes, "Get us." Oh, dear. Deary, deary, deary me. Yeah, it's...
So we got a next question?
Yeah, we probably should. Timu asks... since the first Great British Railway livery is out, how good or bad is it in real life? Honestly, do you know what? I don't actually mind it. I thought I wouldn't. I thought with the concept art they released, I wouldn't like it, but now that it's actually out, and they've slightly tweaked the shade of blue to be... the other shade of blue to be darker, I actually really like it. And part of the reasons that I do like it is because it's not what came before. They didn't do BR Blue, which is what I was afraid they were going to do. And I'm very glad that they didn't do that. And that they instead went for something completely new. I like the incorporation of the Union Jack and the way they've done it. I do wish they had different liveries for local services and some of the Crack Expresses. But I don't mind it. It looks really good, especially with the slightly darker blue they actually went for on the actual... on the actual rolling stock for the lighter shade of blue. I'm glad that it's darker.
I like trains.
I'm just glad it's something new. I'm just glad that it's not it's not a attempt to harp on at what came before. The only thing that would have been... Yeah, basically. It's fine. I like
The
it.
only good train is the Shinkansen.
Incorrect.
No, correction. The only good trains are electric.
No, she'll be... Problem is the... not really. Flying Scotsman Green wouldn't really work on an EMU. And I like it doesn't really work on multiple units. That shade of green just doesn't as an overall color. Doesn't really work. To be honest, I'm not really fond of apple green, if I'm honest. I much prefer
Apple is crap.
Eh. Oh, you're talking about BR green. Again, like I say, again, that would be a pivot to the past, which I don't want them to do. I don't want GBR to be the greatest hits of former railways. I want it to be a new thing with its own identity that's not tied into the past, because that's what it needs to be. It shouldn't be even attempting to evoke the past. It should be building for the future. We have a massive heritage scene in this country that can bring the past to life and keep the memory of it alive. We don't need our actual railway. We don't need our actual, functional railway system to do it. I am gonna miss the yellow front ends though. R.I.P. yellow front ends. 1969 to 2024.
Well, special opinion, I actually quite like the white and yellow. The white with yellow highlights.
Which one? Which one's that?
I don't know which trains they are, but they're the ones that run through my local train station.
White with yellow highlights.
That do freight and commercial.
White with yellow highlights. What do they look like? Can you describe them? Like, are they rounded? Have they got a sloping nose? Have they got a flat nose?
Right, it's either they've got their rounded nose and they're electric.
What's your local station? What's the station that's
Ipswich.
next to... Ips... Oh! Ips... Hang on.
And then you're going, somewhere to King's Cross. And then just fly by into the white and yellow.
Oh! From something to King's... White and yellow... Oh, do you mean... Oh. White and yellow through Ipswich. I don't. I mean, you've got there's the Anglia sets, but they're red with yellow. They've got yellow front ends and red highlights. With
It might be the Anglia ones, because the local Anglia that heads out to Felixstowe, which is a flat end, that's red and yellow, and that looks good.
Yeah.
But the ones that just go straight through and head into Colchester, that are relatively quick. They're all white with yellow highlights.
Let's have a look. Well, white with yellow. I know what you mean. You mean the I think you mean the... Oh, I think you mean the what's left of the last Loco Hall sets and the 500s, because the only red they have the only red they have apart from a little bit of their front ends is the doors, and the rest is the big yellow panel
they have
at
red
either end.
doors.
Yeah, with yellow, and with the and then you've got what you might see as yellow highlights, probably the first class indicators, yellow bars across top of the coach, which means it's first class, and then obviously you've got the yellow warning panels at either end.
Possibly.
Yeah, still, yeah. Wow, we did a little bit of searching there, and we found something. No, privatization was arguably the correct choice. They just didn't go far enough. Here's the thing: national is good. Full private with a little bit of state oversight is also good. The cursed hellhole we got in the 90s was neither fish nor fowl. The railway companies didn't control the track, so couldn't really upgrade the infrastructure. And they also, because they couldn't control the infrastructure, they didn't really have that much control over timings or the way in which they were trying to organize their networks and upgrade it. So therefore, they couldn't really build the networks they wanted to build.
Yeah, but in return, they just didn't have to pay most of the overhead.
Yeah. Which unfortunately led to the horrible bit where private railway companies didn't really feel attached to their services because they could blame everything on Railtrack if anything went wrong. Which, although to be fair, Railtrack was also a colossal fucking waste of...
Yeah, but they basically sold off the profitable parts.
Yeah. Whereas if you're gonna privatize, you do it properly. You sell parts of the railway system as new individual companies, not selling the right to operate certain services, because it was a quick way to make a quick buck, and it did give the government still some control. Bear in mind, privatization wasn't privatization. It was privatization of the operation of the services, not so much the track and the trains.
Yeah, it was oh shit, government overhead of the late 80s, the collapse of the industrial sector.
Ironically enough, as the private sector poured millions into new trains and government actually got Network Rail going on upgrading the infrastructure, which actually cost far less now they weren't also having to run the trains. It took 20 years, but the railway system we have now actually does function and is full of relatively modern pieces of rolling stock. Is it perfect?
Aside from HS2.
Yeah, yeah. HS2 is a... No, Wesley, it really couldn't have. The British government of the 90s / 2000s really was not... They were not in a good way. They really were not. It's taken 30 years for the country to recover from the effects of forced techification, shall we say. The move away from low-tech and large manufacturing to high-tech manufacturing, small-scale industrial maneuver, limited-scale, high-intensity resource extraction of certain high-value materials, looking at Cornwall in particular for some of the metal works down there, and a move to a service economy on top of all that.
Yeah. But people forget the reunification of Germany caused an economic crash in Europe.
Yes, it did. It's basically what killed sectorization, which was basically the non-private version of privatization, basically. That's what sectorization was. It was the non-private version of privatization.
And British manufacturing was starting to recover from factory at that point. The British manufacturing sector had broken its unions and was starting to recover. And then the reunification of Germany happened. And East Germany was very poor, had cheap standard of living, but was very heavily industrialized. So when that reintegrated into the EU, by reintegrating with Germany, the price of German goods fucking plummeted, German cost of living plummeted, and it caused an economic crash around Europe in the industrial sectors.
Yep. We weren't the only ones to get hit, by the way. This affected everybody. It's just it's just that one of the unique casualties was British rail sectorization and British rail generally.
No, the British industrial base was a casualty.
No. I said one of the casualties.
Because France still had a very strong, actually quite a strong sector, so it was capable of taking it and recapitalizing. So was everyone else. But because the British industrial base had to recapitalize after Thatcher broke the unions, there wasn't any capital left in the system to recapitalize again after German reunification.
We're only now seeing a new industrial base starting to develop in the UK. Well,
Yeah.
a mature one. Like, and bear in mind, I grew up in the period where this was happening, and I've been on the ground floor seeing a lot of these new industries start up. And believe me, they're there. A lot of people say to me, Britain doesn't build anything. I'm like, motherfucker, you just don't see it. Like, go onto any of the numerous industrial estates across the country, and go to any of the nondescript warehouses. I guarantee you, you'll find a company building something making profit in a factory. But because you don't see a chimney and you don't see a big old traditional factory, people don't see it.
Also, the biggest issue is if you look at where's industrializing around London and the South Coast.
The north is actually doing the belt across Hull, Leeds, Sheffield, Manchester, Liverpool's also industrializing, but that is leaving also a gap north and south of it as well.
Yeah, but the issue is that it's industrializing. It's still a small industrial base, whereas the south has a service economy to support itself, and the north does not.
I wouldn't be so sure.
So the north still has mass unemployment.
It used to. We do have employment has come to the north of a different fashion.
Yeah, but it's still most of the north is significantly below the poverty line.
Yeah.
Like, if you took the rich regions of the south out of the UK the north would be classified as the developing nation.
Yeah, some of it would be. Yeah, I count myself very lucky that I am.
You move south.
I didn't. I'm in Sheffield. I've always been in Sheffield.
Yeah. Because the parts that were really badly hit are north of you.
Ah.
Because if you want the biggest casualty of fucking
Yeah.
deindustrialization, look at Newcastle, Sunderland, Cumberland,
Glasgow,
fucking Berwick.
The Scots have every right.
York.
The Scots have every right to feel betrayed. But the solution to that
What?
the solution to that isn't leaving the Union. I don't think the Fire Eaters actually understand what a shit state they'll be in if they leave. Like, if they vote for it, they absolutely should have the right to leave. But I don't think they understand what's gonna happen when they do.
Yeah, they don't understand that the south is the profitable part of the UK. And that's not the south of being England. That's the south of England.
Yeah. If they leave the UK, they don't have to listen to what London said. No, I don't think devolution was a mistake. I think we can only claim
It was.
Really?
In hindsight, it was.
Okay.
Compared to the proposed alternative.
Okay. You'd better start clarifying real quick, because I can't. If you let me finish, I can't see a thing that gives people in regions that have historical bases as being semi-independent polities voice within what is an almost federal system a bad thing.
Yeah, because post World War II, when devolution starts, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was two major ways of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
One was you create the devolved parliaments and you head to a more almost American federal system, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other one, what that was proposed, was a unitary system where
Right.
every county got a seat in a new House of Commons.
Damn.
And devolution would be done by empowering local councils.
How would that have fitted with the Lords?
It won't change anything with the Lords.
Good.
Because it would be a mass expansion of the House of Commons.
How would that fit in the House of Commons?
Well, some would have loved it, some would have hated it.
Hmm.
Because it would have... Right, it's going to sound shitty, but a significant reason devolution happened was because of the Conservatives. And that was by creating and going through the devolved parliaments, they massively diminished the power of Scottish and Welsh voting in the House of Commons.
But wouldn't that have created the... Which I get that, but then why have consistent governments, both Tory and Labour, pushed for the recreation of the Celtic language, the teaching of Welsh and Scottish in schools? You know, all the cultural
That's on a
stuff.
local level. Because as much as I don't like it, the Welsh National Party is the one who's saved Welsh from extinction. Because Paul actually ran for them when he was younger. I can tell you all about it. Yeah, is Paul that's in Northern Wales, right, Dragon?
He's not here.
Dragon's not here.
Oh fuck, never mind. I thought I heard him.
I like that was such a moment. Yeah. That was such a that was such a moment. I love it.
Yeah, but basically, the Conservatives were able to, by creating the devolved parliaments, shift the House of Commons to being a lot more concentrated the House of Commons power in England. And because of England's county setup, and with stuff like the constant merging and repartitioning of counties like Yorkshire, which, notice how that seems to coincide with election cycles.
Yeah.
They were able to basically kind of gerrymander the system.
Yeah.
By diminishing the power of traditionally Labour and Socialist regions.
It's basically the only way you can really properly gerrymander in the UK, because you can't do it in the traditional way like the US does. It wouldn't pass any of the bloody roadblocks at all. It'd be slammed by the Commons, slammed by the Lords, heck, probably even slammed by the King. If you try to gerrymander the US way.
Which is why the devolved parliaments are the way they are. Because it means that traditionally socialist areas, like South Wales and southern Scotland, because their voting power is less, so a Scottish vote is worth less than an English vote for the elections in the House of Commons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, and in return for that power, the Scots get their own parliament.
Which the problem with Scottish independence basically is that the system is set up so that Scotland does benefit from this arrangement. Make no mistake, they actually have the better NHS, better university stuff.
No, they lose from it though.
No, you didn't let me finish.
Oh god, so go on.
But the trade-offs are arguably not worth what they've gained.
Scotland's got the power of it's a one-party state.
What?
Outside the Highlands.
What do you mean one-party state?
Since the creation of the Scottish devolved Parliament, the SNP have dominated it almost entirely.
Weren't they getting thrashed recently, though?
That was the last election. Like, just the last election. And they've recently won another one.
Yeah.
And because they've basically turned it in, the SNP's now turned it into a one-party state, one-party parliament in Scotland, you have the issue of the SNP's incompetent, nepotistic and corrupt as shit, because they don't have to worry about getting voted out.
Well, yes.
Because they can just point at Labour and the Conservatives and go, see, Englishmen, and can fuel sectarian conflict.
Yeah. At least Scotland's not the cluster truck that is Northern Ireland.
Northern Ireland for the past 40 years has been ruled by a Governor General.
What?
And it's probably, yeah.
Ah.
Are you not aware of that?
No, I thought the devolved state had been threatened to withdraw. I didn't think it had been.
No, so the Governor General of Ireland is Northern Ireland is a position in the cabinet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if the Northern Irish Parliament can't elect a leader, or in the interim, the Governor General has powers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is okay, and he oversees the transition of elections. The issue is the Northern Irish Parliament's been fucking deadlocked for the past 30 years. And every time they've actually got someone in, they immediately started backstabbing them. So no one's actually been able to take up, in totality, the powers that the elected representative of that parliament gives them.
Mm-hmm.
Which means the Governor General still de facto ruling. Basically, right, take Westminster, right, Philippe?
Yes.
Well, imagine that if Parliament can't elect a Prime Minister, the King can rule.
Right.
And he lets go of the Prime Minister's power when Parliament elects a Prime Minister.
Right.
Now imagine Westminster's been unable to elect a Prime Minister for 40 years.
Oh my.
Mm.
We really are.
This is what we like to call a bit of a fucky wucky.
I would say that we are a dysfunctional state, and we are, but there is also the fact that we're not the only one with problems like this, so it's not really... Everyone's just a little bit dysfunctional.
Yeah, if you think England and Scotland are bad, just remember that you don't live in Northern Ireland.
That's true.
Mm.
Oh, dear. Anyway. We need to work through the questions, don't we? Right. Wow. Okay. Wait, I put that in there. I'm fairly certain I put that in there. I'm 99% sure I put that in there. I did not. I thought I did.
You did put a Team U question in announcements.
Whoops. It's fine. 961. For Foxer, why did HMS Hood's Curtis Brown geared steam turbines have a shorter service life than the RN expected?
Because she was several thousand tons heavier than she was supposed to be. And so for her to have the same performance, they had to run the turbines harder. You run the turbines harder, they've got a shorter lifespan.
Engineering!
Next question, because I don't really think I can elaborate on that without going super deep.
Admiral Wellesley asks, the year is 1922, right after the Washington Naval Treaty was signed. You, with your knowledge of real history, are to plan a way to secure Britain's shipbuilding industry, both private and royal dockyards, dominance in the world for the rest of the 20th century. What would you do? I'm sorry to tell you this, old chap, but the United States of America is sat on the other side of the Atlantic. It doesn't matter what I do. That ship has sailed. I can maintain a strong second place position, but I ain't catching him ever again. It is 1922. Washington has been signed. That ship has sailed.
I mean, you're in a case where if you can prevent World War II, you can just maintain parity.
Yeah, but dominance, global dominance? No. That ain't happening ever again.
It depends.
It can.
Yeah, it's going to depend on what flavor of dominance do you want to uphold. Because a tech dominance you can probably do.
Oh, maintain it at second place. That I can do very easily. Basically, just keep doing what they do in the pre-interwar period, since that's fine. The only difference is you need to handle if the Second World War happens, you need to handle recovery from it significantly better, and be leaning on the government if I'm representing both the royal shipbuilding industry and the other shipbuilding industry very heavily for Marshall Plan aid, and also leading into the creation of. Basically, we need to be leading the charge on new ship construction techniques. And we need to be leading the charge on all the things with hindsight I know are going to be big sales winners. There need to be new shipyards constructed near traditional shipbuilding areas, but not in them, so as to take advantage of the new sort of yards you need to do things at scale, like you need to do in modern shipbuilding. But even then, I'm still not going to be able to match the merchant yards that will spring up in the Far East. What I will be able to do is at least keep Britain, in terms of quality, if not quantity, ahead of its rivals, and getting contracts for things like survey ships, smaller scale warships, bespoke merchant ships, cruise ships. That sort of thing.
So, quick thing. Is this happening in the 20s or the 40s?
This starts in 1922.
Okay.
And we have all our hindsight. And apparently it's all three of us going back.
Yeah. Well, one of us needs to go Johnny Silverhand in Germany and stop World War II.
I'm sending the Mad American.
Because the fact is, right, it's the collapse of the British Empire that leads to Britain not being able to sustain a fleet on parity with the Americans.
We can't prevent the collapse of the Empire.
You can prevent collapse to conversion.
No, but you can delay it. Because... Right. British authority in the Far East collapsed because of the Japanese invasion of Malaya and Burma.
Mm-hmm.
It basically proved that the British could be beaten, could be driven out.
I mean...
So you need to not lose Malaya.
Which basically means we need a large fleet postured over there, and modern aviation as well, postured over there.
Yeah, which is why you need World War II in Europe not to happen.
Or we need to be over in. Like, if we can't stop World War II, we need it to be over in. We need when we need a weaker Germany that the Poles can stop, or we need basically the French to go. No half-ass. No, we're fucking going. We know you're not ready. Neither are we. We're fucking going. We're gonna seize as much German territory as we can before we're stopped. We're fucking going.
Because if Congress will only give America as much as it needs, the US Navy, as much as it needs to fulfill its obligations, right?
Yeah.
How we maintain superiority of the US Navy is prevent the mass expansion of US obligations.
Which means we need to retain our obligations.
Yes. Basically, America in the Cold War had a lot of soft power in the fact that they had massive fuck-off navy. They had the massive fuck-off navy because they had taken over the Royal Navy's positions for police on the high seas. If you can stop America having that shift from regional power and limited overseas power to global police, you can shrink the US Navy by not having the necessity to exist at that size. But to do that, you need to stop World War II and the mass expansion of infrastructure there and the jumping tech that comes from it.
or World War II gets put down quickly.
That's what I said. That's what I
But
said.
you've kind of missed a major thing, though. I'd have said. In the 20s, the US is still effectively second strongest. If you can maintain the Royal Navy through the 20s and into the 30s, you can keep a large form of naval dominance in the Royal Navy's hands, especially if you don't bloody pay to shut down the shipyards.
Well, no, it's not even that. The issue is that the Americans have got the fucking industrial base, right?
But they
To be
don't have the
well
political
dominant.
capital to leverage it most
Yeah.
of the time.
But they have the economy. If they've got the political capital, there is fuck all we can do against it. But the political capital for the US Navy that we know in modern timeline post World War II is because they're forced to take over the role of policing the sea and the economic advantages that come from policing the sea. If America never has to surge its industrial base to take on that role, then they've still got the world's biggest economy, but it's no longer no longer as much invested in maintaining the US Navy.
I will point out to people suggesting certain things. From what I'm reading from the question, we control ship construction and the private sector. We don't control national policy. We can prevent the shipyards being shut down, as Dragon suggests, so that we can do. But we can't control government policy.
But also, you would, for instance, another thing though is that you do is you throw out the London Naval Treaty.
We could do that. Well, no, we can't throw out London, but we can.
You can.
We don't have that authority.
If the Navy categorically refuses,
We're not the Navy.
then how can we do anything?
We just nebulously can. We just
Then
nebulously control-
we clearly have some form of influence.
Yeah.
Therefore, we get the Navy to disagree with the London Naval Treaty.
Apparently, Wellesley says we control government policy in terms of shipbuilding, nothing else. So in that
Then
case,
we can't do anything.
Then we can't do anything.
You've literally, at that point, there is no power at all.
Yeah.
Because effectively, Wellesley, what role have is basically the panel taking control of?
we get
Because it
dictated
must
to.
be a role.
Yeah, we get dictated to if we're in this position by the government from above and the Navy from below.
Yeah, so things play out historically. Because we can't do the pivotal changes that we need to stop it collapsing, like I said.
If you put us in the position of a nebulous backwater cabal that has fingers in, let's say, the government, the Navy, and
You just need the first, second, and third Sea Lord.
well, no, I much prefer this bit because it means we can then influence policy as well. If we're a nebulous cabal of very wealthy people,
Well, if you've got the first, second, and third Sea Lord all agreeing about something, that influences policy.
it does. But I want to be able to send a mercenary to blow up Adolf Hitler.
What makes you think first, second, and third Sea Lord couldn't arrange that?
I suppose, but still, I want to be funny man. I want to be
Hey,
funny man in a
Considering
manor
it seems
house.
to be mostly focused on the Navy stuff, assuming that you are in charge of the various ministers of the Navy and the ranking members of it,
Suppose.
gives the easiest solution to, for instance, but if you can throw out London by just influencing the government that the Navy does not agree to this, and that you even just lie and say, if we agree to this, there will be catastrophic problems.
That's not a lie with our hindsight.
Yes, but they won't, but necessarily, but they might argue otherwise, but there's various ways around it effectively. And as you said, if we can basically knock out Germany quicker than average would be good, or just influence them basically influence the government of a harder line needs to be taken against Germany.
I mean, honestly, Dragon, given that we can stop them in 36, the French.
No,
The thing is,
can't.
we can. The French don't have to. The French don't have to agree to stop Rhineland. We could just blockade Germany and say withdraw from the Rhineland, or else the French don't have to do diddly
And
squat.
the Germans go, okay, and
Their economy collapses in on itself. I hope. I
No,
don't think.
it's
I
not.
don't think you realize
No.
the shaky
No,
state.
no,
of
no,
the
no, no. Now, if you're doing that in 32,
Hmm.
I agree. But
But
by
36.
36 and 37, they're in the most stable form of autarky they will ever achieve.
Okay, fair enough. But I will point out that
And unless we're going to go into what's it called? Basically the bit into the Baltic. And even into the Baltic and basically say, Sweden, you're not allowed to trade with them.
well, I can't do that.
Yeah, but because what's compromising, like, what elements of the German economy under autarky aren't autarkic? It's food production. They haven't been in on Poland yet. And they're still trading with the Poles and the Soviets. So they've got oil there, and they've got food there. Good God, Poland's got a massive food surplus.
Yeah, there is.
Their oil demand is significantly lower because they're not actively at war yet.
Hmm.
And iron ore, unless we're willing to fuck about in the Baltic, the Swedes aren't going to give a shit. Neither will the Soviets.
Hell, arguably the Germans
Neither
could
the
just trade with
Austrians.
France.
I
As
mean,
much as the French hate the Germans, money talks.
and also the French. The thing is, the French can't even. What's the word?
The French are broke.
Yeah, and
So if the Germans offer them money,
and doing
the French would really take a trade deal.
Yeah, and doing anything with the French in 36 will probably result in a civil war in France.
The problem is we don't control France in any way.
If I could,
So therefore, we can't do anything with
the
France.
things I would do.
Knowing France in this period, get cooed.
You wouldn't get food. You would just get removed from power by the French Assembly just stopping agreeing with you.
And before that, and before anyone says this is me just basically picking on Fleet, no, like that's just how unstable the French government is at this point.
What, during the Washington negotiations, they went through something like 15 different governments?
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah. I think in the period between the 20s and like 36, they go through something like 33 governments.
Yeah, Wellesley, the German armies in the Rhine were ordered to stand out if the French postured. They were, yeah, but the French, establishment was going to collapse if France postured.
And remember, the Germans for the Rhineland muster a force of 1.2 million. Of debatable quality, but that's still 1.2 million men.
The lack of air force fundamentally doesn't matter when you have that many men under arms.
Well, because what mobilizing 1.2 million men does, if to the French, is show that the Germans are serious about going, fuck it, we ball if they intervene.
Mm-hmm.
And France isn't ready to start balling.
No.
No, they're entirely ready to start balling. Balling with tears.
Yeah. Like, the French military is mostly ready for a war of the kind that would be fought if they did ball. It's just that every other part of France is screaming hell no.
Even then, the military's not ready.
Sorry, the French General Staff is ready, nothing else is.
Also, something else that would be useful in preventing the decline of British dominance, make sure the bloody capital ship pause doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Well, no, the capital ship pause don't fundamentally matter.
No.
It helps, though, because it means that actually ships might continue on as anticipated.
Why would we go to war with our biggest trading partner, Gallery Officer?
But...
For stupider things.
Right. It's because theoretically, yes, the US fleet is weaker in the interwar period.
It's also not a war. It's also not a war I think we could win.
The Royal Navy could win it. It would just be painful, and they wouldn't get much from fighting it.
And we'd probably lose Canada.
65-35, maybe 70-30. No, you probably don't lose Canada.
Can't really stop the US from taking it.
You can. It's called trying to invade Canada.
Yeah.
It's called trying to invade Canada when Canada have, at this point in time, got plans to use chemical weapons and all sorts of other fun things to basically say anyone who comes and invades Canadian soil, go back the other way.
Well, no, the thing is,
I'm pretty sure if you gave Canada nukes, they would gladly belker themselves for get off our territory.
yeah, because in this period you can't go through the Canadian interior, so north of Ohio, that sort of area. You got to go across the Great Lakes and through Maine. Maine, that's a fucking mountain range into tundra and arboreal forest. But so you got to go across the Great Lakes. The part of the Canadian war plan to defend the Great Lakes is an amazing thing called 7,200 free floating mine per lake. You can't predict them because they're free floating and they're magnetic, so they just come up and blow you up if you try and get across them.
Typical officer, the UK would dog walk the US in the early and mid 30s. Let's burn
No.
the White House. No, they would
No.
not. No, they would not. No British troops are setting foot on US soil. It's not happening. It'll be a naval war with maybe some skirmishing on the Canadian border. I'm sorry. The West doesn't matter, where a significant chunk of US industry is.
You could and likely
Canadian.
would have raids on coastal cities.
The issue is that between Canada and America, the main invasion path is through the Great Lakes and across the St. Lawrence. For Canada, that's an excellent defensive position. For the Americans, that's an excellent defensive position. Because I'm sorry, try and cross the Great Lakes into the fortress city known as Detroit.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
That can sustain an army of hundreds of thousands at this point.
The US plus Canada had a more modern military in the early and mid 30s, and they were motorized compared to the US ground. No, they would not, gunnery officer. Trying to invade the US is hell, especially in this period. The amount of armed resistance that would be put in your way would be insane. There would be 100,000 militiamen within the first 2 weeks of the war if the UK attempted to invade. Even if the US professional military wasn't ready to stand in their way, it would literally be house-to-house fighting with every town defended. Every single thing is a bloody roadblock on the way from the Canadian border to Washington. It would be hell.
No. The whole thing with militiamen's bullshit as well. Because America, although it's questionable, it's equipped to World War I standards, is capable on the home soil of levying a World War I mass infantry force, and has the agriculture and the horse base to support it. Yes, the British Empire is more mechanized, but the British mechanized forces are counting, remember correctly, at this point to 80,000 men in trucks.
And of course, let's not
which
forget...
is bigger than the Americans, but America, especially coming down from Canada, is big enough that you're talking movements on the army group level, not divisional.
And let's not forget here as well, when it comes to air power, the Americans have the home field advantage, and in terms of capability, in the early to mid 30s, both sides are roughly equivalent in terms of what their bombers and fighter aircraft can do.
Yeah. British advantage is maintaining a thin front line through the use of Canada and the Canadian interior.
Britain needs to not get involved in a mainland invasion of the US. That is a good way to lose the war.
Yeah. Like, good luck fighting it on the Great Plains with a small force.
Yeah.
And not just having your enemy go fucking around you.
The US militia isn't organised like UK Home Defence was in the World War II breakout. They will only defend their own lands, homes or farms instead of critical bridges, crossroads or bases. That's not how patriotism in this period works.
You put yourself as well. America had a mass conscription-based army at this time. They're capable of in World War I, institute a draft of millions. They will do it again if the mainland's under threat. We're not even talking on the level of militia here. We're talking about basic World War I style mobilization. Which the Americans can do by the millions.
They have the equipment to do it by the millions as well, without even getting into their production capabilities.
Yeah.
A rifle behind every blade of grass, I believe, is the quote.
It does not even. No, we're not even talking militia here, Ruinon. There's that as well to deal with.
Yeah, but this is Great Depression America. We can't trust the militia. Come on. Half the time they're shooting at the current government.
Montana, in this period, that's the entire US. The concentration of gun ownership in what we now call red states hasn't happened yet.
I think the current statistics are there's 3 guns for every human being in private hands in America generally. And while yes, that number has gone up on a per capita basis, it's not gone up that much, especially when you're looking at a time frame where most of the rural areas, the woods were their butcher shop.
Gunnery officer, even if the US militias are weakly armed, the regular army would be millions of men within weeks to months of the conflict breaking out, all armed with a good old reliable Springfield rifle, an excellent rifle.
Yeah, gunnery officer. All right. Do not get America of the 1890s confused with America of the 1930s. America of the 1890s that doesn't have a conscript army and doesn't have the infrastructure to maintain or the stockpiles to maintain a conscript army. Yeah, you've got a point. I think America of the 1930s has the equipment, it has the infrastructure, it's got the reserve that would go on to be the National Guard. No, right. Typical gunnery officer. The British forces aren't much better. British forces, especially the professionals, are what, 300,000 strong. If you're going off the rebuilt BF, now most of them are equipped to World War I standards. On a front the size of the Great Lakes, 300,000 men is a footnote. Look at World War I on the Western Front. How small a frontage 300,000 men can protect and sustain protection of.
Yeah, Montana. He's arguing for a decapitation strike in the early to mid 30s against the US.
Yeah,
which we all just went, this is a really bad idea, economically,
Also
militarily.
It's also a lot harder in the 20s and 30s than it was in 1812. You can't just sail ships up the Chesapeake and up the Potomac like you could in 1812. You're going to have long-range shore-based artillery. You're going to have air cover and
US submarines. US bloody subs.
Basically, pretty much the Civil War was the last time you could reliably count on shoving a force up the Chesapeake to raid DC. And even then, I don't remember.
Well, the
DC defenses came under attack in the Civil War. I don't remember them being breached and the Capitol sacked.
And also, Ruinon, that was only the land-based defenses. The attacking DC from the sea in the Civil War would have been suicide. Not just because of the fortifications, but because the Union, like the Confederacy, also invested in naval mines.
So,
Yeah.
can we just appreciate though that between the Civil War to World War One, warfare changed.
Yeah. And also,
Warfare stopped being about maneuver and pitched battles. It became a war of mass, both industrial and population mass.
Gunner
Because
Officer.
a lot of the force modifiers we take for granted in the Cold War didn't exist yet.
Yeah, Gunner Officer. Sorry, go on.
America has the industrial force to levy an army of millions on the continental United States and support that force.
Also, Gunner
The
Officer.
British Empire had to respond in kind, except the British Empire's industrial base is an ocean away.
Oh, and it has to call on the Empire for this, which is going to create a great deal of tension. Oh, and it gets better. I'm just reading his war goals for this, apparently. To delay British imperial collapse and remove World War One UK, the UK's World War One debt with the US. It's a win-win war. This is economic and imperial suicide. You are basically committing the UK to a war which guarantees the British Empire falls, the British economy collapses, and even if they win,
Okay. I think I can explain this better. Are you all aware on why the Great Depression had such a massive effect? The collapse of the dollar in the Great Depression had such a massive effect on the world's economy.
Because it was basically the dollar as a currency was backstopping the bonds that not only Britain and France relied on for their debt, they were also backstopping the bonds of many other countries, including Germany, which was enabling the Germans to pay their debts to the France and the British, which was enabling them to pay their debts to the US.
Yeah, but to the bonds, there was a fixed exchange rate between a dollar is worth X amounts of pounds. It was something like $7 to a pound, or something dumb. If you start liquidating that debt because a war started, you're collapsing the currency beneath itself. Because suddenly, you've taken out a significant stockpile of monetary value in the form of dollars from the British economy, which means the same amount of pounds is covering less economic assets, which means the pound sterling drops like a fucking brick.
And also, you do realise the French are likely to join against Britain, because the sooner this war fucking ends, the sooner France stops basically collapsing. France either joins the US against Britain to end the fucking war quickly, or basically collapses into civil war before it can. Because this war is basically a death knell for France.
Yeah, because how the debt is financed is that the dollar is still tied to the gold standard, right?
Yep.
That means that pound sterling is tied to the American gold standard in this period. Because the bond says, say, each dollar's worth a gram of gold, for example. $10 is worth £1. Therefore, 10 grams of American gold is worth £1. And the UK is still on the sterling standard, so as far as the pound's value is concerned, the pounds in debt the Americans have, that equivalent of gold is in the British system. Which is why the British focus on paying that back, and expanding their own gold stockpile so they can cover the inflation caused by World War One.
Mm-hmm.
So you can either do what the British did and raise your gold standard and then get off it in the 30s to make the pound free floating, or the pound collapses when the material backing it collapses because the American gold standard is no longer on the British markets. And that's also not including the fact that the American and the British economies are very heavily interlinked with transnational corporations. I mean, if you want to dive, look at how much of US shipbuilding fucking Vickers own through subsidiaries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
And you're like, you knock out 30% of the value of Vickers alone, and it's like, that's going to do brilliant things to the economy.
Yeah, it's not. It's not. You don't want to do that. You don't want to be doing that. I'm telling you.
Mass inflation for everyone.
You're basically talking about a way to speedrun not just the UK's collapse, but you're talking about the way to create a dystopia. A global dystopia. That is what you will cause if you start this war.
Yeah, because the best, if the British government does this for some fucking suicidal lemming reason, the best they can hope to do is collapse the dollar by collapsing the debt that's sustaining the massive overvalue of the dollar. By defaulting on their debt, which crashes the dollar, which causes relative to the franc, so the French default, which crashes the dollar's value versus the... What's the German one?
The Mark. The Deutsche
Fine.
Mark. Deutsche Mark.
The Deutschmark, which can collapse the dollar. But at that point, well done. Communism. That's an level of economic devastation that gives you communism.
Worldwide communism.
Well, say, yeah, it would lead to anarchy. And anarchy leads to totalitarianism.
Yep.
Do you see any borders from up here? Anyway, moving on. Because this is a fucking dumb topic. Do you want to move on?
Yes, I do. I very much do. Typical officer asks, opinions on the proposed land-based F-18 Hornet, F-18L by Northrop. Do you think F-18s operated by non-aircraft carrier nations are actually land-based F-18s? Yes. That's by definition what they are. There's a reason why the land-based F-18 concept was dropped, because everyone realised, what's the fucking point? If you want F-18s, just buy fucking F-18s. Like, you don't need a land-based version of the F-18. If you want F-18s to operate on land, just fucking buy F-18s. If you desperately want F-18s that much. And if you don't want F-18s but want a land-based fighter that's cheap to run and is somewhat rough field, F-16 is right fucking there! You may speak, Foxo. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut your thunder there.
If the residual carrier capability of F-18 is an issue, just buy F-16.
Yeah.
But if it's really an issue, Raphael and Pavnavia want a word with you.
Yes.
And you're a fighter.
Yes. Knight31 asks, for Foxo, how was Hood's hull in good condition when her hull had been overloaded by 6,412 tons for nearly 20 years? That structural steel will have been needed to fix her in her planned modernisation. I mean, that's not a significant weight overload for the size of ship Hood is. She's big, but...
Hood's hull was in relatively good condition because yes, her framing needed work and her framing was tired and would need replacing. But the fact that the most important part of her keel, wasn't warped. It wasn't bent, it wasn't warped, and it had by sheer fucking luck, hadn't seen the negative effects of bowing because of the weight redistribution. Her hull was in good condition because her hull could be reconditioned quite quickly without having to without having to do a great refit.
Mm-hmm. Basically. I will very quickly answer a question from Knight as well, because I did just accidentally miss it. That's the one. Follow up from question about the Golden Nets plan from Brew ships. How will the Japanese and British militaries be affected in the aftermath of ACGA's Valhalla War, other than SDSR 2010 is to be scrapped? Basically, not at all. The funny thing about this whole Valhalla War from Ace Combat Joint Assault is that despite the flash of the fancy airships and the big ticket attacks on London and other bits and bobs, and some disruption to the global financial sector, honestly, they don't really do that much. They make a big splash and a bang, but they're kind of like Al Qaeda. What did the Twin Towers actually do economically to the world? Very little. What did the 2007 attacks on London Tube do to the world? Very little. They were tragedies of a massive scale, to be sure, but in terms of damage to the UK and America militarily, what did they actually do? The point I'm making is...
started the economic shit show that was the Dust Bowl. Not Dust Bowl, Sandbox.
Yeah. But all these Valhallian guys is blow up a little bit of is blow up the port in Tokyo and do some damage to London. That's it. It's not major.
It still hurts.
Yeah, but it's not going to affect the UK and Japanese militaries. They're just going to go on as normal.
The stock market's going to crash, but they crash off every terror attack.
Yeah. Like you might see a rush on super weapons, given these guys have big funky railguns and stuff. Like there might be a rush on super weapons from the great powers, but that's about it. Right, so back to the normal flow of questions. Here we go. Yay. Typical gunner officer, opinions on Sikorsky's R4. Do you think it's the first mass-producible, and like the Renault FT, it's the influential design in terms of future helicopter design, and also think it's the first platform for rotary-winged Casavac? Yes, 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 and yes. The R4 was, without question, the foundational helicopter. It was the thing that laid the entire groundwork for what helicopter can be, what helicopter can do, and for militaries, what helicopter can do for you. It did the first Casavac in history by a rotary-winged aircraft. It did lay the foundation for what a helicopter should look like in military service, and the basic plan for helicopters generally going forwards. I can say without fear of contradiction, the R4 was the fucking helicopter for the period it was extant.
You could call it John Helicopter at that point.
Like, very, very few vehicles live up to the hype around them. R4 is one of those rare vehicles where, no, yeah, it is. It is. It deserves all the hype it gets. Without just contradiction, it does. And I want to disagree with that. I think I'm right on that. The R4 is just... It is just this foundational thing. The helicopters.
You surprised us by saying something right for once.
Funny that, isn't it? 1981. If the British get 3 35,000-ton treaty ships by offering up 140,000 tons from one Orion and 4 of the 5 1911 KGVs, what do the US and Japan get in return? As there's no way the British get this without Japan are getting something in return. Very quickly, Knight, do you mean 3 in addition to Nelson and Rodney, or do you mean +1 to Nelson and Rodney? Very quickly, Knight, I need an answer from you. Do you mean 35,000-ton ships in addition to Nelson and Rodney, or do you mean Nelson, Rodney +1 more? Because that's not clear. And I can't go further without knowing that. We're waiting for Knight to tell me what's going on. Come on, Knight. Lay it on us. What do we got? Oh, that's right. The delay in the stream. Right, so let's see what he says. What has he said? 3 treaty ships for those 13 point... No, that still doesn't tell me if it's 3 extra or 3 total. That just says that's the same thing you said in the question. Is it 3 total or 3 extra? I don't... So, okay, so it is 3 total treaty ships as a whole. Right. Okay. Right, I see. Well... That's really quite simple to answer then. In that case, Britain gets 3 Nelsons. Or 3 F3s, whichever flavour you think they were going to get. Japan designs something to go with... Japan designs... Yeah, Japan's got to get something. Maybe they get a... Maybe they get to build something to the size of the Nagatos. So they don't get a full... They don't get a full 35,000-ton ship. But they get to build a one-off or another Nagato, basically. And the US will just get another... We'll get to build one brand new ship to 35,000 tons. Because don't forget, the British did get 3 treaty ships. They had Hood. Hood was their 3rd. I'm struggling to think how this is going to work, actually. Because 3 total is Nelson, Rodney, and Hood. That's the way it always was. So... Hang on a minute. Isn't this literally just the historical bloody thing that happened anyway? Since the Orions and King George V was scrapped anyway under Washington, only the Iron Dukes and Tiger were spared. Chaps, am I missing something here? I feel like I'm missing the forest for the trees with this question. I kind of feel like we're looking at what happened historically, just under a different name and described differently. Can people hear me? Am I coming through?
Yep.
Anyone else, please weigh in on this, because I don't really know what to say at this point. Anyone? Dragon and Foxo anytime.
Nope.
Even just a yes, you're right, fleet, or no, you're wrong. Anything will do.
Banana.
For scale?
I don't know how to deal with this tonight, because problem is it's not really that much. It's basically the historical turnout as happened historically. You've basically just made provisions for Hood. You've basically written into the treaty what was an unofficial understanding, basically. And at that point, Britain, the US and Japan just get to go suck it. Hood plus 3 treaty ships. Yeah, but the problem with that is that... Nelson and Rodney is already a cop-out for the British. It's already a huge win. Like, getting Nelson and Rodney is already a huge win. Because you're not... This whole scenario makes no sense. You're offering up things that were already going to be offered up to get 1 extra treaty ship when you're already being given a very generous stipend to build 2 brand new keel-up 35,000-ton ships that the other powers know are going to be the most powerful battleships in the world when you complete them. And now you want a 3rd? The US and Japan are just going to shut this down. They're just like, you want more? No, absolutely not. The only way the British get this is basically by offering to scrap Hood in favour of a uniform 3 new ships. And we all know that ain't never going to happen. So the British will probably quietly drop this in favour of just getting the 2 ships they were going to get historically. Genuinely, the problem is you've not changed things enough that there's really anything for the US and Japan to gain from this that really offsets it, and you've not given the British enough that they aren't willing to step back from it to where they were historically. This whole thing really is kind of a nothing burger. The ships that are going to be scrapped were going to be scrapped anyway under Washington. So you're not really giving up anything you weren't already giving up. The British are...
A lot of the 13.5 ships were going to be scrapped anyway because they were old and worn out.
Yeah, the Irans and King George V were already going to be scrapped. The British have already gotten an extremely generous offer to build 2 brand new keel-up 16-inch armed capital ships that the other 2 powers know are going to be better than anything they've got built or building. That's already pretty fucking generous. And, of course, they get to keep Hood, which is already a massively generous coup for the UK. If the British...
Hood alone is an out-of-context problem for the Americans.
If the British say, oh, we're going to scrap all these old 30.5-inch ships, can we get 1 more ship on top of the things you've given us? That may actually result in bad blood, and they may not get... The Japanese and the Americans may go, well, no. Like, I'm sorry, you don't get to build anything during the building holiday. You have to keep your fleet tonnage as it is with the ships you've got. Tough shit. We'll let you keep Hood, obviously, but if you're going to be this petty about trying to get a 3rd ship, for shit you were going to have to give up anyway, no new ships.
Then
that's just the treaty collapses. Yeah.
Why the hell would they ever suggest that?
Yeah, but this is the point, because they
that's not the point.
They would suggest something so petty to the UK suggesting something as petty as this. They're already getting 2.
No, they
extra...
wouldn't. That's not how this sort of thing works.
Well, this whole thing of offering of wanting another treaty ship for shit you were already giving up anyway which
Yeah,
makes
Royal
right.
Navy can definitely
Right.
argue
No. But it's not the Royal Navy that's negotiating here, Dragon. It's the British government.
But you could
And the
also
British
argue,
government doesn't want to spend money while it's
Mhm.
incredibly in debt.
But-
The Royal Navy doesn't want to sign the treaty. The Royal Navy is being forced to sign the treaty whether it wants to or not.
but by the looks of this, if the British are trying to do this, it is the government wanting to do so then. Which they could reasonably make arguments for.
not. The problem is with only one additional ship here, it's such a. It's not a minor enough concession. It's putting. It creates massive problems because at that point the British will get 3 new ships of a class, and the only options for Japan and the US is to build a one-off new, which is going to be a massive problem for them, given that that will create a one-off fleet unit that doesn't really fit what they're going for. And in the Japanese
It's actively
case,
a detriment.
Wait,
yeah,
Because in this treaty setup, Hood is an out of context problem. She's a 32 knot capital ship. There is somewhere until the advent of the carrier, fuck and all treaty powers can do to force Hood to stand and fight. The Japanese know this, and the Americans don't even bother planning against her.
the problem is it's not enough.
Yeah, you give everyone one more capital ship, which is what you'd have to do. Those two, America's gonna look at Hood and go, we want something like that. Japan's gonna look at Hood and go, we want something like that.
And with Japan, they're going to have an even bigger problem because in order to keep the 553 ratio going, Japan's ship cannot be a 35,000 ton ship. It's going to have to be, the max tonnage is going to have to be Nagato's tonnage.
Yeah.
Which is going to put their ship at a disadvantage, which is going to piss them off as well.
And so the Royal Navy undermines its own position, and the British government undermines its own position
And also,
by pushing for the extra ship.
they're not giving up anything they weren't already giving up, so it just looks petty.
it doesn't look petty.
We want extra for doing nothing. That's bad faith argument.
That's
where-
not no, it's not them looking petty, because that's not how they phrase it.
But no, that's literally what the question says. The British offer to scrap ships they're already offering to scrap under the treaty for a third
But it's
ship.
not a case of being petty. You're using petty wrong here.
Boxer, what's the way you would describe it? Because this might be a case of me getting my language wrong again. Selfish?
No. Tone deaf.
Yes, that might be a better way of saying it.
When the entire treaty is about limiting spending, so we're going to be a bunch of prickly wankers and try and push through an increase in spending. The Americans don't want to spend, the Japanese don't want to spend, that's why they've come to the table. The British government doesn't want to spend. It's why the Royal Navy's at the table. So by demanding an increase in spending, put themselves in a worse position. The British government, it's tone deaf.
This either results in a series of one-off capital ships and 3 Nelsons or 3 F3s. Well, what are 3 options? The Japanese get one, the US get one, the British get 3 Nelsons or F3s. The treaties collapse because of the tone-deaf nature of the British edition. And that makes everything weird. Or the third option, the other treaty powers just go, okay then, if you're going to be like this about building new ships, why should you get to build new ships at all? Which again leads to 2 options. Either the British get no new ships, or they walk and the treaties collapse.
Oh, yeah, the treaties collapse in that case because the British
Right.
aren't going to take not having 16-inch ships. And the Colorados are almost done, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, considering the US is already building 4 Colorados.
Yeah.
So this is why the Royal Navy the British government could very easily argue for it. Because keep in mind, Washington, BB-47, was actually launched by this point.
But again,
So
this
they-
comes back to Foxhill's
but-
point of spending.
One more ship's not an overthing, but also it's a case of if they're scrapping one extra Orion and scrapping the KGVs.
Which those ships are going to be scrapped anyway.
No, they weren't. 2 of the Orions were allowed to be kept, and also the KGV. Two Orions were not part of the actual naval treaty.
But I think we're missing the forest of the treaty. It delays treaty negotiations, right? Because it's another clause to argue over.
Yes.
Which means the treaty doesn't fucking happen because the American government changes. End of story. Next question. And everyone's worse off for it.
To be fair, I would argue we can't say that.
I'd argue we can. Royal Navy expenditure has to skyrocket for the
Why does it
modern
have to
generation
skyrocket?
capital ship. Because instead of having to build 2 capital ships, they've now got to maintain their 2-power standard against the Japanese and the Americans.
That's not what the Royal Navy's
no.
plan was post-war at all.
What I think I do think you're slightly overstating the expenditure of the Royal Navy here.
The Royal Navy thing is the thing. It's
Will
the
it be
Royal-
more expensive? Yes.
Like the Royal Navy,
But-
the
Yeah,
government.
it's more expensive in a time when the British Empire can't pay for more expensive.
It can do by not paying down the
it can
national
do.
debt.
It can do. You're literally a person who has argued for this in the past.
Now, I've argued that by 24-25 they can take the expenditure, but not in 2021.
More likely, this actually just like I don't think the treaty wouldn't get signed because the American government changes. Also depends on how long the treaty negotiations take. Because how long actually is it between the treaty negotiations and the actual US election? I don't recall. Like, how long are we actually talking here?
I'll go check.
And also, let's not forget here that a lot of US congressional members who have coastal states were actively salivating over the massive spending rise for US shipbuilding that the treaty was going to bring. Because everyone forgets that while, yes, for a lot of the other powers, the treaties were a chance to pare down naval spending, for the USN and the certain members of Congress, it was a chance to get, for the first time in about a decade and a half, lucrative cruiser, destroyer, and submarine contracts.
Please ignore this. Please ignore how much this benefits me. That the fact that just before this, I happened to build a new set of naval
Yeah.
infrastructure that can build cruisers in my state.
So, right,
Yeah.
so the campaigning season for the United States 2022 election starts in March.
You might want to...
The
You might wanna
Washington Naval
rephrase that.
Conference. The Washington Naval Conference ends in the 6th of February.
Well,
Like-
then wait. You said the campaigning season starts.
Yeah.
Then that's fine.
Because there is a vested interest from certain members of Congress on both sides of the House of the treaty being signed. Because there is a vast windfall for various coastal states coming in terms of contracts of ship construction, of cruisers, destroyers, and auxiliaries.
Right.
Which
Okay.
would be cool, aside from that both
So-
candidates are isolationist and anti-spending,
Okay,
multi-spending.
Right.
Well,
Problem.
that's-
Right. Wait a sec, Fleet. Campaigning season starts in March, right?
right?
So I've just double checked this myself. The actual election doesn't happen till November.
Yeah.
So you have until November. You have until the government formally changes from
And even-
one to the other.
And even then, the government doesn't change. Don't forget, there is the U.S. in the U.S. electoral system. The new president doesn't take office until January of the next year.
So you've got a lot longer than initially was thought. Unless Runon would like to wade in on how US political stuff actually works.
Let me just move on at this point,
We can
because you're
do.
going around in fucking circles.
I've completely lost track of whatever the heck it is you guys are theoretically talking about, so
Okay,
I can't
let's have a
offer
look.
anything of note.
Typical Gunnery Officer asks, what would happen in the late 70s if Canada, Australia, and maybe New Zealand got or purchased one or two Invincible class carriers alongside the UK to replace their older carriers? How would these countries project power in the late Cold War? I'm going to assume purchased here, and the most likely nation is Australia. If Australia purchased one or two Invincibles, and that's a that brings the Invincible buyout to 5 ships, which reduces cost, and it brings Sea Harrier buy-in up significantly, since the Australians are also going to want, because the Australian Navy will want to retain the air defense capabilities that HMAS Australia provided, which is going to increase the production of Sea Harriers, which is going to bring their unit cost down as well. What this means is that gives you 5 Commonwealth carriers, since Commonwealth defense is still something, is still a thing in the 70s and 80s. We haven't seen the complete detachment of Australia from working with the British yet. That's a late 80s, 90s thing when they pivot massively towards the US in terms of defense partnership. They're very much leaning US partnership in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, but it's not till the late 80s, early 90s that they really take the plunge. That gives the Australians an ability to very easily contest Soviet, and with the escort fleet they've got as well, that gives the Australians an ability to easily contest Soviet and Chinese shipping in the Far East. With the Sea Harrier's ability to carry and launch anti-ship missiles, which it can do, with it, what was that noise?
Do not be alarmed about the noise of the
That gives a strike package to the Australians, which is quite useful. And it also means they retain fixed-wing carrier aviation into the new millennium. It also means you get probably a longer-lived Sea Harrier, and it probably means that you do actually get Sea Harrier 2, because the Australians are probably going to want to extend the lives of their Invincibles, and when they do choose to transition over to the Canberra-class assault ships, they're going to want to retain that fleet aviation capability onto the Canberras, since they have crews that are trained for it, and they have the aircraft to do the job. Whereas they historically did not choose to buy the Canberras with the Harrier or AV-8 V2 Harriers from the US, when they had the option to, because they didn't have the capability. This basically means Australia remains a navy that operates fixed-wing carrier aviation, and is likely a partner in F-35. And breathe. In terms of how they project power in the late Cold War, the same as they did historically, except they'd have fixed-wing aviation to back it up. It doesn't really change how the Australians project power. The Canadians don't need a ship or want a ship. They won't get it. New Zealand is just... no, they do not have the money, the finances, the people, anything to do this. So like that's why I say Australia is the most likely option, and they'd likely opt for 1 or 2. Even so, yeah, basically. I've said all I want to say on the matter, actually. If anyone else wants to chip in, please do so.
I mean, you're gonna always have the questionable thing of Big Eagle and Sea Harrier are a choice, but it could work. But yeah, go on. Next question.
Everyone had their say? Who wants to, anyway? Boop. Nat 6831. How ridiculous is the Spanish Tier 9 battleship Triunfante? She was announced in World of Warships Dev Block 50.5 and is based on the Duncan, aka G3, if Spain bought one. Let's have a nosy, shall we? And while I'm at it, let's have a look at the rest of the line.
It's not a line. Single premium ship.
Oh. Let's have a look. The only Tier 9 Spanish battleship I can see is a Vittorio Veneto.
It's in the dev blogs.
Oh. Mm. Mm. Ah, here she is. Oh. Here we go. Let's have a look. If Britain is building ships continually through the interwar period, and Spain decisively won the Rif Wars, which therefore lends credibility to the Spanish monarchy, and thereby helps in, and thereby stabilizes the liberal Spanish monarchy and the government that supports it, in addition to the benefits and bank Spain made by basically making money hand over fist as a result of the aftermath of during and after World War One. If all of those things are true, then in the late 1930s, when Britain is looking for whatever generation of capital ships this is, since the G and N3s, will be like 5 to 10 generations down at this point. They'll probably be looking to dispose of the G and N3s. And given that the size and power of capital ships has increased in this non-naval treaty world, and given they are fairly old technologically and fairly simple technologically by the late 30s in a non-treaty world, I would expect the upfront purchase cost of a G3 in such a world to be within the margin that Spain could afford, and to also be a ship of a minimum basic capability to deter the capital ships of the world that would exist as first-rate units in this world. If that makes sense. But that is the only world in which this ship makes sense. It's not just that Britain has to be a non-treaty world, it also has to be a Spain that has won the wars with the Rif, has secured some sort of suzerainty over Morocco in collaboration with the French as they did historically, and has had its monarchy and liberal government survive the interwar period and taken advantage of the money they made off the bankrolling of and / profiteering off of the First World War. In such a world, this ship makes sense. In any other world, it does not. Dragon, do you have any thoughts on that? Since you're very much World of Warships aligned.
She's basically G3. That's what that the Spanish currently have, which has had an Italian upgrade. I'm not sure if you noticed, but she uses the Italian 135mm twin turrets.
That wouldn't
a secondary battery.
That wouldn't surprise.
As well as twin 90mm
on
the aft.
That's kind of a World of Warships ism, which I could excuse.
Beyond that, well, they didn't even give her. Normally, they try and give at least some historical information or some sort of, this is a what if of this, that, and the other. No, the line is, this ship has inherited the name of one of the Spanish ships of the line of the 18th century.
Yeah.
This one's
made it the fuck up.
This is basically because Spain doesn't have much you can give it.
No.
Still think they should have been part of Pan-Europe.
Yeah. Typical Gunnery Officer asks, related to Q3, same time period for the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force. They build one or two Hyuga or Izumo-S carriers, but with late 70s or 80s designs. Do you think the carrier aviation destroyer would be an inspiration for true mega aircraft carriers for the Japanese maritime self-defense force in the 21st century? No. Just because you give them helicopter carriers earlier, that doesn't mean that they're going to be in any other position than they are now for carrier aviation. Bear in mind, 70s and 80s, Japan is still not entirely trusted by the West. They're not going to get Harriers for these carriers at all in any way. They will solely be helicopter combatants.
Well, they can.
No, they're not. The Japanese
You
maritime
never
self-
can.
The Japanese maritime self-defense force is not trusted to have carriers at this point. It's not until the 90s that they can become trusted enough to have that happen, and to even consider operating jets at sea.
Well, if they're trusted enough to get helicopter carriers, they can get the fucking aircraft for them.
No.
Japan was trusted enough to buy and operate and be a part of the Tornado project.
Japan doesn't operate tornadoes.
They were part of the Panavia projects.
Well, yes, because they were valuable for it. They didn't get them.
Yeah. The British government was perfectly willing to sell them. They just didn't want them. Because they went American. But the fact is, the Americans might not trust them at this point, but the British are willing to sell to fucking anyone. And if they're Harrier carriers, the British will quite happily sell them Harriers. For fuck's sake, they were willing to sell a Tornado to the Saudis.
Japan considered the Tornado, especially in the late 80s, as a contemporary/contender with the F-16 and F-18 before finally having to settle on the Mitsubishi F-2.
Yep.
They were also interested again when Taiwan and South Korea expressed interest in buying them, but when that deal fell through, they sort of went, okay, then no point.
Yeah. But the fact is, the Saudis weren't trusted and the British sold aircraft to them. The Italians weren't trusted and the British sold aircraft to them. Fuck it. Pre-unification Germany got these aircraft.
Well,
if Japan wants them, Japan can get them. They just might have to pay a premium to get the Americans to shut up.
fair enough. Nice that they want us. The Russian World of Warships closed beta 22.6, the Tier 9 European battleship Budapest armed with 10 350mm guns. Were the Austro-Hungarians really considering a battleship with 10 350mm guns? Yes, that's literally the successor to the Tegetovs. That's literally the Ersatz Monarchs were that ship. That's literally what the Ersatz Monarchs were. 2 triples, 2 twins, 350mm. But also, just as a personal thing, I don't want to get any more questions about Russian World of Warships. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear questions about it. I don't want to see questions about it. I don't want to think about it.
Yeah, and none of us here follow it.
About that.
Well, aside from Dragon, but he's still limited in what he does.
But yeah, I don't want to hear
Of
any more
course
questions.
Of course I follow it, because it's actually really fascinating. Because beyond the point, the fact that they have now been actually taken over by the Russian government in because the Russian government kind of forcibly took over the company and installed their own people into it. I actually do feel slightly bad for them. And there's actually a lot of very interesting developments in how they do stuff there.
Yeah, but it's run by the Russian government, so therefore I don't give a damn. And I really would rather we don't talk about it or give it any press, because doing so funnels money indirectly to the Russian government.
It literally doesn't. To be brutally honest,
it does, Dragon. If you give them interest,
talking about it's not going to make a single lick of difference, Fleet. To be blunt, I understand you disliking it, but no offense, being blunt, the level of engagement here that would actually then go and contribute towards it is non-existent.
Yeah, but any impact we can make, we should probably try to. Montana asks, regarding your history of the High Seas Fleet appears Jan 1st, 39, what would you do differently now that you have more experience? Well, to be fair, that's one of the ones I wouldn't actually change, since the majority of that was Dr. Clark, and he does know his stuff on that sort of thing. So there's not really anything that needs to change on that one. That one's actually pretty well fleshed out and squared away. Doesn't need any reworking at all. That's actually one of the ones that just stands as is. I'm sorry, but unfortunately, that's one of the only ones where I can actually say that. There's nothing really needing changing. Follow-on question: what made the Austro-Hungarians choose 356 over 350s? I'm not sure actually. I believe they looked at two different choices for the Ersatz Monarchs. And decided on the caliber they did for, I suppose, reasons, if you must know.
Blame it on the Czechs. Because the Czechs were the ones building the stuff for him.
That's true. The Czechs basically did decide what guns went on Austrian ships. And if the
Czechs say they're making 350s, the Austrian-Hungarian military uses 350s.
And if the Czechs say, actually, no, we want to change, can you use 356, these new 356s we've developed instead? Well...
They use the 356s. The next question?
Yes. But the USS Montana. Has anyone seen Tolsey's Blucher modernization net? Yes, I have, and like most of his modernizations, it is interesting in quotation marks. The man's a skilled artist, don't get me wrong, but he does do a lot more with the hulls than they are physically capable of actually handling. And more importantly, would physically actually have done to them, given the state they would be in. As an art piece, it's interesting to look at. As a realistic interpretation of a hypothetical rebuild of the armored cruiser Blucher, it's not much to look at. Knights 831. So outside of transverse to the Dominions, what is it about the surviving fleet of 11 13.5-inch battleships and 3 13.5-inch battle cruisers that so scares the US at Washington that getting rid of them is an objective, as they are borderline obsolete by the 20s? The US isn't scared of the 13.5-inch battle fleet. They're not. They're not. The only reason they want to get rid of them is because it gives the Royal Navy mass they can disposably use. They're not scared of them. They're just rather the Royal Navy didn't have them.
Because if the Royal Navy gets rid of their 13.5-inch ships, they can get rid of their 12 and some of their 14s.
And then they can equalize around their 15 and 14 and their 15-inch battle lines and their 14 and the more modern 14-inch standards. Well, no, all 14, the 14 and 15s. Basically, by getting rid of the 13.5s, the US can basically throw everything before their last generation of 12-inch ships under the bus.
No, they can throw all the 12-inch under the bus.
Nope. They retain their most modern 12-inch ships.
Oh yeah, they retain Wyoming for training.
Yeah, they retain the Wyoming.
But she's very quickly not in a state she can be used in combat.
No, Wyoming lasts a fair old while. The
She
White-
starts getting turrets taken off in 23.
Yeah,
if I'm
no.
correct.
You've also got what's called Arkansas.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's Arkansas that's the longest lived of the Wyomings. It's Wyoming itself is the training ship, but it's Arkansas that actually has the longer active career as a frontline combatant out of the two of them. Yeah, she's the one that's modernized in the mid-20s. Also, she visited Kiel in 1930 as well. Interesting enough. Right. Next slide, please. Nice variation in questions today. It's nice. Reminds me of the good old days. Feels like an old classical ramblings again. Which I do love me a good old classic ramblings. Admiral Wellesley, Insanity 2, asks, shitpost question, what if Vickers Armstrong did not get split up and then bought by McDonnell Douglas in 1995? This is definitely a Foxo question.
What?
Huh?
What?
Wait a minute.
I-
Whoa.
Hold up. Say that again.
I'll put it again for the people in the back. What if Vickers Armstrong did not get split up and then bought by McDonnell Douglas in 1995?
Then bought McDonnell Douglas in 95, not bought by.
Oh,
I was going to say, held up. They were bought by BAE.
Yeah, I know there's the meme that McDonnell Douglas bought Boeing with Boeing's money, but the reason McDonnell Douglas was able to wear Boeing as a flesh suit because they kept all their management that then got high positions in Boeing's management structure, is because McDonnell Douglas financially was in really bad shape by the time it got bought out.
Pretty much.
so
But this one is a case of not my circus, not my monkeys. Personally.
it's kind of hard to... Yeah, because you basically have to pad out the entire history of the company up to that point. The company that doesn't have a history at that point because it's gone. You need to know who's in charge, who's calling the shots, and why. For this change to make sense.
Because the issue is, if McDonnell Douglas doesn't get eaten by Boeing, they get eaten by General Electric, who was also gunning for them. And if Boeing doesn't step in, General Electric rips them apart for parts.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
1931 asks, in the new event, the new Azure Lane event Alliance, before the Hegio Bull, that the army of what is the Holy Roman Empire has ship girls, but their army is still using medieval swords and shields. Ain't that a problem?
No.
Azure Lane
Why is it a problem?
Azure Lane is a monstrous beast.
I just failed to see where the problem is.
I don't know. Oh boy, this is going to make Foxo. I'm just going to let Foxo go off on a tangent with this next one because this will be her baby. And the last question of the day, actually. Admiral Wellesley asks, if you're in charge of the British aerospace industry from 1944 onwards, what would you do to secure British industry's future in civilian and military aerospace? Practically free reign, including the capacity to create a British Operation Paperclip to snag up some German and Italian scientists, plus the capacity to increase British economic capacity to do such ventures. I'm going to let Foxo open the video on this one. I'm just going to interject when I think I have something to add.
That's 144. Politely.
I will say they don't say secure dominance. They just say secure British industry's future in civilian and military aerospace.
Right, okay.
You have free reign. You can do Operation
So there's
Paperclip.
two paths. Do I have the capability of bailing companies out?
It does say something vague along the lines of increasing British economic capacity to do such ventures, which I guess would fall. That would fall under that.
If that's the case, Avro, fucked. Avro needs to get consolidated. It's already a shit show. The two worth saving that aren't in aircraft for the shits and giggles looking at you, English Electric. The Supreme has the air ministry in the government's hand. So far up its arse, it's a flesh puppet.
You mean Supermarine there, right?
Yeah, Supermarine.
Right.
Just taking a drink. Avro's fucked. Blackburn? Not going to do any changes to Blackburn. Because it was... The only good aircraft they produced was the Buccaneer. And the Buccaneer came out of a case of, well, we might as well try, we're going to go bankrupt anyway. De Havilland in the best position to survive into the Cold War. Because A, they're less indebted. B, de Havilland himself is what Billy Messerschmitt thought he was. Because, yeah, de Havilland himself knew how to design his plane, especially a multi-engine plane. Westland is fucked. Again, they're Westland's savable, but they're more going into contractor work at this point, and later helicopters.
I would argue it's not that bad just yet. Westland actually are in a reasonable position because of stuff like they did good training aircraft, and then they also get the Wyvern contract. So
yeah, Westland, I don't want to touch because I want Westland to pivot into helicopters and become one of the pioneers of attack helicopters. Love you, Link. Only helicopter I've ever ridden on. I was in fucking America. Supremes, Hawker. Okay, so how I would solve this is, I want to create British Aerospace because that's how you consolidate the design ideas of these smaller indebted companies. Hawker as a base, merge what's left of Supreme into Hawker. And take the salvageable bits of Avro. And yeah, so basically all the smaller ones, like Fairy, put them all under Hawker and conglomerating that. To a degree, I'm thinking while speaking. Avro, pray to God you can sell it to English Electric. Because English Electric are an actual functional company and could actually get Avro working. And they're getting into the bomber business. And they do poach a lot of Avro staff. With
I would
Avro
ar-
goes some shitter.
When are you doing this? Because remember, Avro in the 40s and 50s is actually decent. It's only really after that they start having the major problems.
No. After World War II, even in the late 40s, Avro's a shit show.
Well, in terms of the development branches, though, they're fine because it's where you get Shackleton and Vulcan from.
Yeah, but the company behind all that is disintegrating. It's why I want to incorporate them into English Electric so you can keep the design lines and the design teams, but get it into a company that's actually making money. And English Electric are interested in it. And conglomerate, and I've already said about conglomerate around Hawker. Secondly, you need to bail out de Havilland. And then let de Havilland do his thing when it comes to medium aircraft. Maybe merge Hawker, no, not Hawker, de Havilland and Gloucester, maybe. Because, so to make them to survive, I want Avro and English Electric, because they've got the economic base to build large aircraft. I want Hawker to absorb the smaller elements, which they can make some good shit if you give them time, because Hawker's actually still above board somehow. Secondly, de Havilland and possibly Gloucester, you can basically form a big three. Yeah. And de Havilland, you can let go ball. Get merchant with Gloucester somehow and get them favorable relation and make sure de Havilland himself, doesn't actively piss off the executives of Rolls-Royce by being an arrogant wanker. Which, okay, de Havilland's arrogance is deserved, but that's not the point. And try and form a big three. And then, so when you start hitting, because Hawker can do second generation jets, de Havilland and Gloucester can do second generation jets. And then when it comes time for the big three, pray to God that you can get Pavnavia involved. But Pavnavia is... Pavnavia is a part of British aerospace, but it's not because it's technically German. It's weird. In fact, it's headquartered in the UK for quite a long part of the Cold War. Anyway, try and get Pavnavia in with Hawker, and you've got a good way of saving British aviation. English Electric and Avro will fail, because English Electric will crash and burn. It's not up to them. But they don't have actual developmental funds for bombers going into the 70s until the Defence White Papers. At that point, well, when the funding to the Air Force is cut in the 70s and the 80s, this all gets shit canned. And you probably see a BAE form between Hawker and what remains of Vickers and de Havilland Gloucester. Oh yeah, I know I can do anything, but no matter what I do, I'm going to hit third generation jets, which is a massive recapitalization. And then I'm going to run into the issue of the mass shrinkage of air forces in Europe.
Including preventing budget cuts, that's a good way to spiral the UK into a debt spiral it can't recover from.
Yeah. And English Electric, as a company, really strong in the 60s and 70s. But by the end of the 70s, gets shit canned.
Yes.
Because it gets broken up. Thank you, Margaret Thatcher.
I mean, you can make English Electric viable. You just have to tell them to stop fucking around in aviation and go back to building locomotives.
No. Locomotives ain't gonna fucking sell them. Basically, to save English Electric, you have to stop it merging with GFC, the General Electric Company.
Right.
And those two together... well, like to say the 80s weren't kind to them,
Yeah.
with the rise of modern electronics.
Mm-hmm.
And the issue is you're never going to get a BAE situation because there's just not the demand for aircraft to support three majors.
No. But basically what you're doing is laying a groundwork for BAE to exist that saves as much of the infrastructure and knowledge base as possible.
Yeah, basically keep de Havilland and Gloucester around. Because those are the two most devastating casualties to this.
Could you create a BAE that's more an oversight commission over subsidiaries like the Russian state aviation thing is? You know, like you still have Mikoyan and Sukhoi and all that under the overarching umbrella of, you know, the Russian state aircraft corporation. Could BAE be something like that instead in your thing?
BAE centralizes for debt fraud reasons.
Right.
Because a lot of the entities that make up BAE in de facto reality just cease to exist. Their debts cease to exist.
Right.
If you do a traditional conglomeration, those debts pass on to the new parent company.
Right. Okay, fair enough. Okay. That's fair. But yeah, so there you are, folks. Foxo's grand plan to not completely
Remember,
fuck up British aviation.
BAE pays little to no taxes. And their founding was a way of getting out of committing debt fraud.
Mm-hmm. Right. And on that bombshell, what about British space? What about British space?
What about British space?
You can't really say the British space program. It's not. Thing is, if the British space program, with what it set out to do, had started in, say, 2010, with an equivalent level of sort of adjusted for GDP funding, it would have been phenomenally successful because the market for small satellites would have been huge. But unfortunately, it didn't, and it's never going to get that level of funding.
And the big issue is the General Electric Corporation in the 80s had a brilliant possibility of going into satellites and satellite communications.
And they did it.
They made some really bad acquisitions and fucked it all up.
Yes. Yes, they did.
And I've got control of the aerospace industry. I don't have control of the British electronics industry.
No, sadly, she does not.
Because if I did, I would have them all assassinated.
Yes, she would. I've seen the
Because they're
plan.
all fucking retards.
I've seen the plans. It's quite substantial.
I'd also have most of the government assassinated because all plans for satellites in the 80s and 90s will rely on the Americans. Then George W. Bush happens.
Mm-hmm. No, Wellesley, we have a nice point to cut the question off and leave it there. So, and with that, thank you very much for coming, everyone. I hope you've all enjoyed. Take care, and I'll catch you all next time.
But
Before
Wesley,
Fox...
if I did have control of the British space industry, well, let's just say the British government never actually signed the various treaties that prevent the weaponization of orbit. And under my authority in head of the British Space Agency, they wouldn't sign it.
Oh boy. Anyway, thank you.
And I would
everyone.
invest in a spaceborne nuclear deterrence.
Anyway, thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Take care, and I'll see you all next week for more rambling. No, actually, I won't see you all next week for any ramblings because I'll be in the Netherlands. So there'll be no.
And don't forget to tip your waitresses.
Yes, there'll be no night. I don't. The only clarification about World of Warships questions is this: I don't want any questions about Russian World of Warships. End of. That's it. That's it. That's the only
And
clarification.
Right, before we go, I just want you to imagine the opening salvo of Iraqi freedom being rods from God.